Hello everybody and welcome to the Sam's Report. For those of you wondering why this isn't a live show, yeah, no worries. I've got to take my kid to the doctor for some routine stuff. Absolutely nothing to worry about there, but really just kind of cuts into the time and I can't do the podcast at my normal time. So I'm recording it on Thursday evening. So let's hope no large news drops before the morning, but I'm not really expecting that because it's been a relatively dry week, but kind of not at the same time. And yeah, there's been a bunch of official stuff and unofficial stuff, and so we will just kind of dive right in here as we like to do. And unfortunately, no user questions this week. We'll jump back into that next week because I kind of didn't realize I had to do this Thursday night until until now. And so there was no chance to get that stuff up and running. Anyways, let's see. Hands-on with Outlook.com beta. If you guys haven't checked this out yet, Microsoft has a new Outlook.com beta, and it kind of refreshes the interface. It makes it a little bit better. I personally quite like it and did some hands-on stuff with it at the same time. And I think Microsoft is headed in a good direction. I'm not positive on this, but I think it might be built on React. And so if you're a developer and that makes sense to you, feel free to poke around and let me know if you find anything that says otherwise. But yeah, it looks nice. It's just kind of a modern, updated feel. If you've used the old Outlook, it's not that it's bad. And Microsoft is also improving the search too, which is desperately needed. Search on Outlook, or Outlook.com specifically, has been horrible. And I haven't gotten into any real situations with the new stuff yet where I need to search like deep old stuff. So I can't quite comment on that yet, but it does appear to be a little bit better. And so, we'll let the test of time be the true verdict of actually how this plays out. But that's rolling out. First you have to opt into it. Although there is a link up on Thurrott.com where you can actually try it out today without enrolling. Basically just put a hashtag and do a couple other fancy things and you can automatically try out the beta. I did it. It works. It's not so bad. Other things that happened this week that were kind of crazy, and let me explain. Spotify is now on the Xbox One. That's great. If you're a Spotify user, I'm a heavy Spotify user. You can now use it on the Xbox One, and you can go into background tasks, and you can rock out to your favorite music while you're racing or whatever, fragging people, shooting them in the head, doing whatever you do on your Xbox One. Now, here's where it's kind of like the water gets a little muddy. And so Spotify has a desktop app, or not even a UWP, come on, Brad, get with it, a Centennial application on the desktop. And so many people were wondering, like, okay, how are they getting it onto the Xbox One if it's not a true UWP? And so they created another app, and it's really just basically a web wrapper with some extra, a little bit of code to allow it to run it in the background on the Xbox One. And okay, great, that's fine. I'm glad that Spotify is doing all this, but this just like looks in the face of what UWP was trying to accomplish and just like smacks it around a little bit. Reason being, remember Microsoft preached write once, run everywhere, or whatever, all that good stuff. They preached this stuff for years, starting back with Windows 8. And that dream, I think, is officially dead because there is no write once, run everywhere anymore. The closest thing you're going to get to that is a progressive web app. Now, that statement is much more true there than it is in UWP because UWP is not going to run on mobile. I know people are going to email me and say, yes, it can, Brad. Well, okay, for the mass market, it will not run on mobile. And so what's the benefit of using it right there? Tablet interface, it's, Centennial apps can do that kind of stuff, and non-UWP apps can too. Here's the other thing I'm struggling with. What type of UWP application do you, I keep pointing it back here because that's where I play my Xboxes on that TV, is what kind of applications do you truly want on an Xbox? Like one of my favorite modern apps is Appytext, but I'm not going to write a blog post on my Xbox. And so basically it's going to come down to like media consumption apps. And for the most part, those are just through web interfaces. The dream is dead, I think, for the UWP world. Now I want to qualify that because I'm not saying that apps are dead. I'm not saying that the store is dead. I'm not saying that Windows 10 applications are dead. I'm absolutely not saying that. I'm just saying that trying to convince developers to write a specific UWP application in that style is not materializing, and that's why Microsoft has all these bridges, and that's why they're just letting all these Centennial apps in, because to them, that's a bigger benefit to have those Centennial apps in case somebody eventually someday does want to write a UWP application. But right now, the benefit does not outweigh the cost of kind of retooling everything. It's easier just to use the bridges Microsoft has built, get the app in, much like Spotify has done. And I use the store app, and it's honestly, it's good. The biggest benefit you get when you port something to the store is the updates. If you use Spotify desktop app, you will know that Spotify updates this thing. It seems like every week. And I know I joke about Microsoft has developers on staff, and so they force them to go, change, or not developers, but UI experts or whatever you want to call them, designers on staff, and Microsoft is like using them because they've got them on staff, and that's why all this stuff is changing. Spotify changes very frequently the layout of their app, and it's almost frustrating because you get used to a layout, and I swear it seems like twice a year they're updating the style. But anyways, the nice thing about Spotify in the store is that it now updates automatically. And on the desktop app, you used to get this annoying blue bar. It says, hey, you got to click and restart your stuff and all that good stuff. UWP applications, the update mechanism is wonderful. And so the other thing that's coming to the store relatively soon, we don't have a date yet, but I believe they said by the end of the year, is iTunes. And iTunes does the same thing where it updates frequently. Not as much as Spotify, but it's going to be an easier way for Apple to keep all those things updated. So I do firmly believe that there is value in the store. I don't want to say that there's not, but I don't believe that the value of a true UWP application is there like it was. The pitch is not as strong as it was 2-3 years ago. That's just kind of where I'm headed with that. On the security side of things, Microsoft removed some Chinese certificate authorities. So if you're familiar with this, I believe it's called the Trusted Root program that allows them to issue certificates for Windows 10. Microsoft is kind of upset with some Chinese companies, WoSign and StartCom. I believe you have until about late September, so you do have a little bit of grace period. But after that date, Microsoft's going to start revoking those certificates, which means if you're dependent on those for applications or other things like that, you need to figure it out quickly because Microsoft is saying, hey, these guys are not living up to the standards that we require to be able to issue these types of certificates, and so they are shutting them down. And that's a pretty big deal. Microsoft doesn't do this too often, but clearly they're having issues with Chinese companies not abiding by to their standards, and so they're pulling them out. I don't have a full list of how many Chinese authorities there are that can issue certificates, but it's notable that both of these that they are revoking are from China, and we all know that Chinese and spying has kind of been an issue, or their lackadaisical way of approving certain things, and the quality just isn't up to the standards that Microsoft is requiring. And so there you go. It's also interesting to know that Windows 10 has its own version for China, remember, because they don't trust the update mechanisms and all that stuff going back to Redmond, so blah, blah, blah. You can go listen to a prior podcast where I kind of dive into that. Other things Microsoft talked about this week, the new Xbox UI, the Fall Creators Update, is, if you're, I believe, in the alpha ring, you can now access that. It's not broadly available yet well, it's not broadly available. It won't be until later this year, but they're trying it out with, the smallest ring first, and they're showing it off, and it's the reaction to this is very mixed. Some people really like it. If you're a heavy user of the guide, then you will be a big you'll probably like it because they have improved the guide functionality using shoulder buttons to navigate around. But if you're big into seeing your notifications, they've done some baffling things, which I hope are just temporary, like burying the previous notifications tab under settings, which makes no sense whatsoever. There's some social things up. Mixer is getting a lot of space, to no surprise. If you have no intent of ever streaming or gaming, that's not going to be a big thing. And the pin tiles, you can only now, I think, pin 18 tiles. So if you had more than that, you're going to be in some trouble. There's also a lot of white space initially. And so I'm trying not to say I'm for it or against it at this point, because this is the first iteration we're seeing of it. I hope that Microsoft is listening to the feedback that the alpha users are providing, and they're going to be able to implement those changes, because even things getting to your friends list right now, it doesn't actually show their username. It shows their avatar. And it's like, I need the username. I can't recognize people's avatars. So it's like one extra click. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, it's really annoying when it's doing every single day. And so, again, I'm trying to just, bite my tongue here a little bit, and let's wait and see how this materializes. This is the first preview that they have released. I think giving it enough time, Microsoft, I hope they're going to make it right. But let's just kind of see how things play out, shall we? And so other things going on. Right before this podcast, actually, conveniently at 5 o'clock p.m. on Thursday, East Coast time, Microsoft actually finally came out and announced Windows 10 Pro for Workstation. This has been kind of floating around. I actually posted up some of the leak slides and all that stuff, but it's finally official. It's going to arrive with the Fall Creators Update, which we know is likely coming in September. And it's going to do everything that we've talked about. It's going to support Intel and AMD server chips. This is specifically, by the way, designed for high-intensity workloads. It's going to support REFS, which is the resilient file system from Microsoft, persistent memory, and SMB Direct for super quick file transfers, because I know that's what everybody wants. But seriously, what this allows you to do is to run a desktop on server-grade hardware. And I want to say this is like the 12th SKU of Windows 10. I got to go back and check. Not necessarily saying that's a good or bad thing, but there's a lot of SKU complexity. When you talk about S, you talk about all the different E3 and E5, and you talk about Enterprise, and you talk about all this different stuff. There's a lot going on in the SKU world of Windows 10, and I don't know if it's going to get simpler anytime soon. Mostly because Windows 10 is going to be pervasive. It's never really going away, so they need all this stuff. I don't think Windows 10 Workstation, or Windows 10 Pro for Workstation is the proper name, sorry, is going to draw like, tens of millions of users to Windows 10. But I think it is a good thing for those that are running workstation hardware. Now they can finally take advantage of it with Windows 10. Up to this point, it was kind of dicey to get that stuff up and running and get the full benefit. Now with this, starting in the fall, you'll be able to do that. What we don't know is how the licensing is going to play out. Is that going to change? Are they going to charge extra for it? We don't know that, how that is going to be playing out. So I will be curious to see what is going on there. And we should know relatively soon. It's coming in the fall with the Fall Creators Update, which Microsoft isn't, really wrapping that build up, which is somewhat disappointing because we already know all the stuff that's not coming with the Fall Creators Update. But we should know more soon. And so the big news that dropped today. So if you're outside the U.S., this may not sound like a huge deal, but if you're inside the U.S., you will definitely know that this is it's a big problem. So Consumer Reports is downgrading they're no longer recommending Surface hardware. And let's dive into this. So Consumer Reports did a survey of 90,000 tablet and PC users and asked them and said, hey, have you had any issues within 2 years of buying your device? Anything from like freezing, random shutdowns, and all that good stuff. And Surface lost. They lost the survey. They were the lowest on the hardware reliability rating. So Apple, to little surprise, had a 10% complaint rate, if you want to call it, their incident rate. Surface was at 25%. So Apple was number one and Surface was dead last. And so that's a problem for Microsoft. They're pitching these things as premium hardware. They're charging a premium price for them, and they're not reliable. And to be honest, this doesn't really surprise me all that too much, because let's dive into this a little bit, shall we? So they ran the survey up until earlier this year. And so going back 2 years puts you back to, 2015, 2014. So breaking down the hardware that is going to be included in this is primarily, now they didn't tell us specifically, but you can do the math, it's not too hard, is going to be Surface Pro 3 and Surface Pro 4. So those are we always know that the Pro series sells the best. So it's Surface Pro 3 or Surface Pro 4. We know that Pro 4 had the Skylake issues. There were reliability issues. That is not a secret. Surface Pro 3 had some issues too. And Surface Book, which falls into this category, has issues as well. And so I'm not disputing what Consumer Reports is saying. That doesn't surprise me too much. You can go look at the forums. You can go find people who had issues with all of this stuff. What we don't know is the severity of the issues, right? You can have a random shutdown in Windows and it's whatever, right? That happens. That does not surprise me. And so how does that user report it when they're looking at that survey and said, yeah, my computer's randomly shut down? I'm going to say, yes, I have had that issue. The question is, does that issue make you never want to buy a Surface again? Is it a one-off incident? These are the things we don't truly know. Microsoft actually put out a statement right before this podcast saying, hey, we stand behind it. It was written by Panos. And not that they're going to come out and say, hey, no, we don't stand behind our hardware. They say they're working hard. And to their credit, I actually do believe them when they say, hey, their reporting is much less. My reasoning for that is I suspect that that Consumer Reports is much more broad in what they're looking at, right? They're looking just for incidents. Have you ever had an issue with your touchscreen freezing and all that good stuff? It's gonna happen, but what we don't know is if it is such a big deal that somebody returned the hardware, because Microsoft is going to have very good return rate information. Best Buy would. Consumer Reports, not so much. They're looking at purely incident rates in this survey. So yes, this is a bad blow. Trust me, if Microsoft came out and beat Apple, they would be all over this, right? They would be like, yeah, we're at 8%. We beat Apple. They would be huge for that. But at the same time, you have to put this in a frame of reference about where things are headed. Microsoft is still new in the hardware game, and based on the data, this has nothing to do with the Surface Pro, the latest one. I don't have it behind me, and the Surface laptop. So in somewhat, you're rolling the dice if you're going to buy that stuff. I still think it's going to be good hardware. We know Microsoft does well with their warranty work. I've never really heard too many people complaining about that side of Microsoft. So should you buy the new stuff? You know, it's up to you. At the same time, Dell and HP and Lenovo all make great hardware too. That's the benefit of what the Surface line has done. It's elevated the PC experience. HP, their Spectre line is wonderful. You have so many options that if you are truly worried about the Surface reliability, it's not like you're pigeonholed with like Apple per se, where if you don't like the MacBook quality, well, you can't really buy anything else. So you know, that's a personal decision. I haven't had too many major issues, even with this Surface Studio back here, no major problems. Although we know for a fact that not many people are buying Studios, mostly because they are really expensive. But yeah, so there you go. And one thing that, you know, I don't agree with Microsoft here, and I don't agree with Panos. He says, I can and this is in their statement, he said, I can confidently tell you there has never been a better time to buy a Surface. Now, I would qualify that statement. I would say there's never been a better time to buy a Surface Pro or a Surface laptop. That is absolutely true. Would I tell somebody to buy a Surface Book right now? No, I really wouldn't, because it's almost 2 years old at this point. I think there's going to be a refresh here roughly October-ish is kind of what I've heard, that something's going on around then. So it's not quite the best time to buy a Surface. It's depending on which model you're going to buy. Even the Surface Studio is coming up on a year old. I would hope that they would refresh some of the hardware components in that as well. So with that being said, I know what Panos was trying to say, and you know, he wrote it in his own sort of way and gave some light numbers, nothing that's really like tangible that's like you can dive into. But that was a pretty big deal, and I can assure you that Microsoft is taking this extremely seriously. I can assure you that, just from what I've heard around the rumor mills today, just things that I've seen going on at Microsoft, that they are very much taking this report to heart, and they are going to, you know, I don't know what they can do. I don't think they're going to offer any extended warranties, like that's going to fix anything or change anybody's mind. But that is something, you know, Microsoft is heads down trying to figure out how to, you know, they essentially got to push back on this, which is what we see a little bit here. Because while Surface may not, you know, Surface isn't their primary line of business, it's still a pretty significant portion of revenue for them. And Satya Nadella said in I believe it was an internal email, they said to build great software, you have to build great hardware. And so Microsoft isn't leaving the hardware game, at least not these laptops and tablets and all that good stuff. So they're going to stick around for a while. And, you know, I'm confident that Microsoft will figure this out. But, you know, you have your ups and your downs. And this is definitely one of those days where Microsoft is, you know, they got beat up a little bit today in the press. And rightfully so. If Consumer Reports, that's what they found, good on them for reporting that. That's the way it works, right? You can't hide behind the numbers. And I just wish Consumer Reports would give us a little bit more information about some of the incidences and all that good stuff. But there you go, you guys. It's been a relatively quiet week in the world of Microsoft. I know I rambled off a bunch of things that did happen this week, but this is like peak peak vacation season for Microsoft employees. There's a ton of people who are out that I've noticed who are just either posting very nice pictures from various places around the world. And so we're not seeing a ton of stuff, although I can tell you they're going to start gearing up here because it's back to school season, which does impact Microsoft. Not to mention they have Ignite here happening second half of September, which that's a big deal. I'm expecting a lot of IT Pro and kind of that related news coming out at that venue. And makes me kind of wonder actually if they'll announce the Fall Creators Update availability then, because they have that's going on. Unless they have a Surface event around that time and they want to announce that. But I think they're going to finish up here the Fall Creators Update relatively soon. You know, missing a bunch of chunks, but that's what's going on. And so, you know, I'm not gonna keep this any longer, guys. That's all we got for today. I'll be back doing this next week as long as nothing comes up. I should be back to the normal live schedule and all that good stuff. But as always, have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and I'll catch you next time.